My sister made a scene at my engagement party by mocking my career in front of everyone, but she didn't expect my boss to step in and say, "Funny, I was just about to offer her a promotion, and now she's begging me to save her job." I never thought my engagement party would turn into a family battlefield, but my sister managed to make it just that. She's always had a way of belittling me, but this time it went too far. She mocked my career in front of everyone, taking shots at my job and my achievements. I stayed calm, but then my boss, Richard, stepped in and put her in her place in a way that left everyone stunned. Now, my sister's begging me to save her job after her own actions caused her to hit a major roadblock. I'm stuck trying to decide if I should help her, or if she's just getting what she deserves. It all started on a crisp Saturday evening in early spring when I was surrounded by the people I cared about the most, celebrating my recent engagement to Noah. The venue was a quaint local hall in the heart of Hickory Hill, a small town where everyone knows everyone's business. The event wasn't over the top, just a cozy gathering of close friends and family, enough to mark the beginning of the next chapter of my life. I had always dreamed of a peaceful engagement celebration. A time to share in the joy of a decision I had made with the man I loved. But my sister, Madison, had different plans. Growing up, it always felt like my family put Madison on a pedestal. She was 3 years older than me, but in their eyes, she could do no wrong. On the surface, she was a picture of success. She had a high-powered job at a law firm, was always impeccably dressed, and seemed to have everything together. Me? I worked my way up in a small marketing firm. I was good at my job, better than most, if I'm honest, but I was never in the spotlight the way she was. She had a tendency to remind me of that fact. Often. As Noah and I stood in the middle of the room, chatting with family and friends, I noticed Madison enter, her presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. She was dressed in one of her signature outfits, designer, sleek, and sharp. She always had a way of making everyone else feel ordinary, for lack of a better word. But tonight, her arrival felt different. Her smile was tight, almost rehearsed. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning, analyzing, looking for something to pick at, I thought. For the most part, I ignored her. I wasn't here for drama. But the moment we ended up in a group conversation with some of Noah's colleagues and my family, she zeroed in on me. She didn't waste time. "Celeste, it's great to see you so happy. Noah must be thrilled to be settling down with someone who doesn't have to constantly climb the career ladder like the rest of us," she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. I could feel my cheeks flush. I knew what she was getting at. Madison had always been competitive, especially when it came to my career. "Madison, not everyone defines success the same way," I said, trying to keep my voice even. She smirked, clearly enjoying herself. "Oh, of course. I mean, being stuck at that marketing firm for years and just getting by sounds so fulfilling." The words hung in the air for a moment. I could feel every eye in the room turn to me, waiting for my response. Noah, standing beside me, gave me a concerned look, but he knew better than to engage with Madison. He always did. He knew how she could get under my skin. "You've always had a knack for making people feel small, haven't you?" I finally said, my voice steady but cutting. Her eyes narrowed, and she huffed in that way she did when she was about to escalate things. "Come on, Celeste," she continued, clearly not satisfied with just the mild jab. "You're 31 now. Don't you think it's time you did something more impressive with your life? You're practically running in place while everyone else is moving forward. It must be nice to live in Noah's shadow, though. He's got a real career." I felt my chest tighten. Madison always had this ability to make me feel small, and she did it effortlessly. But what she didn't know was that I was no longer the same person who used to retreat and second-guess myself after every verbal attack from her. Noah reached for my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "I'm proud of what I built, Madison," I said, trying to remain calm. "And I'm happy where I am." Madison, undeterred, was about to continue when a voice cut through the tension. "Funny, I was just about to offer Celeste a promotion," Richard, my boss, said coolly from behind Madison. His presence was commanding, and there was a moment of shocked silence as everyone processed what he'd just said. Richard wasn't just any boss. He was well known in our field, a man whose influence stretched far beyond our small marketing firm. He had become a mentor to me, and I respected him immensely. We'd been working closely together for months now, and I had no idea that he even noticed how much I was doing until he made this public acknowledgement. Madison's face immediately flushed a deep shade of red, and she froze, her eyes flicking between me and Richard. "You, what?" she stammered. Richard glanced at her, his expression hardening. "I've been impressed with Celeste's work. She's been taking on more leadership roles in the team, and I think she's ready for something more. It's unfortunate, but sometimes people can't see what's right in front of them." The words hung in the air, and the room seemed to collectively hold its breath. Madison was visibly rattled, and I could tell that this public acknowledgement of my work made her feel like the ground beneath her was slipping away. "Wait, Richard, I didn't," she started, but her words trailed off as she realized the weight of what had just happened. She was the one who had tried to make me feel inferior, and now Richard was publicly recognizing my accomplishments in a way she could never have anticipated. "Maybe you should reconsider how you speak to your sister," Richard said, his voice cool but firm. "And perhaps reflect on your own behavior before you belittle others." The crowd had now fallen into an uncomfortable silence. Madison, who had always been the one to steal the spotlight, was now the one who seemed to be shrinking under the weight of her own words. She stood there, speechless, looking like she wanted to sink into the floor. I didn't take pleasure in seeing her like this, but I also knew that she had crossed a line. For years, she had made me feel small, belittled me in front of family, friends, and even strangers, all because of her own insecurities. But now, in front of everyone, her attempt to undermine me had backfired in the worst possible way. Noah, sensing the sudden tension in the air, gently nudged me to move away from the situation, but I couldn't help but look back at Madison. She was still standing there, her eyes darting from me to Richard and then back to the ground. For the first time, I saw her struggle to regain control over the situation. I didn't want to be the person who rubbed it in. I didn't need to. Instead, I simply walked away. The night went on, but the atmosphere was never quite the same. Madison tried to talk to me a few times, but I kept my distance. She had always been the one to dominate our interactions, but now it was clear that she had no ground to stand on. And I wasn't going to let her trample over me anymore. Hours passed, and Noah and I eventually said our goodbyes, but as I was gathering my things, Madison came up to me. Her face was red and her voice barely above a whisper. "Celeste, I didn't mean for things to go that way. You know I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her words a little shakier than usual. I didn't know what to say. Was she apologizing? Or was she just trying to get out of the mess she had created? I met her gaze, my heart heavy but resolute. "Madison, you need to understand something. I've spent my whole life trying to live up to your expectations, trying to get your approval. But I've learned that my worth isn't measured by you or anyone else. I don't need your validation anymore." She looked down, and I could see the tears in her eyes. But this wasn't just a simple apology. I wasn't going to accept her words as easily as I once had. Things were different now. "I know," she whispered. I just didn't think you'd ever be ahead of me. I didn't want to lose control." For the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. I didn't know what to make of it, but I also knew that this moment wouldn't be the end of our story. There was still a lot to figure out. As I left the party, I couldn't shake off the feeling that the night had changed everything. It wasn't just about the engagement or the recognition from Richard. It was about me standing up for myself in a way I never had before, not just to Madison, but to the whole world, in a sense. Noah and I drove back to our apartment in silence, the weight of the night hanging between us. He had tried to keep the mood light during the party, but I could tell that even he felt the shift. He wasn't unaware of Madison's tendency to push my buttons, but seeing it unfold in real time had affected him too. "Are you okay?" Noah asked as we parked in front of our building. His hand gently brushed mine, a small gesture that somehow grounded me in that moment. I will be, I replied, trying to hold back the wave of emotions that had been building inside me all night. I've never seen her like that. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel sorry for her or. I get it, he said softly, his thumb brushing over the back of my hand. But I think you did the right thing. She needed to hear that. You're not a punching bag for her frustrations anymore. I nodded, grateful for his support, but something nagged at me. I hadn't completely processed everything, and I knew I wouldn't be able to until I figured out what Madison's behavior meant for our relationship moving forward. It wasn't just the insults at the party or her constant undermining of my career. It was the deeper, unspoken rivalry that had always been there, lurking beneath the surface. For so many years, I had allowed Madison to control the narrative of our relationship. Her opinions had always felt like the final word. I didn't want to be that person anymore, but I wasn't sure if she would be able to accept the new dynamic between us. The next day, as I was at work, I tried to focus on my tasks. Richard's words from the night before kept replaying in my mind. His praise, his endorsement, his reminder that I was worthy of recognition, all of it had felt validating in a way that I didn't expect. And yet, I couldn't ignore the thought that kept circling in the back of my mind. Was I ready to be seen as someone with a future outside of Madison's shadow? My phone buzzed on my desk, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Madison. Celeste, I need to talk to you. Can we meet up? I stared at the message for a moment. Part of me wanted to ignore it. She had already made her feelings clear, and I didn't owe her anything. But I couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment she would finally come clean about everything, the jealousy, the competition, and the underlying resentment that had always lingered between us. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it, but I couldn't avoid it forever. So I replied, agreeing to meet her later that evening at a cafe near our apartment. When I arrived at the cafe, Madison was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee in front of her. Her usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, her hair falling loosely around her face. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days, and it made my chest tighten with a mix of emotions. She glanced up as I walked in, her eyes red and puffy, but she quickly wiped away the evidence of her tears. I slid into the booth across from her, my heart racing as I waited for her to speak. I didn't think it would come to this, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think you'd ever be in a position to challenge me, Celeste. And when Richard said what he did, it felt like everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for, was suddenly meaningless. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, waiting for her to continue. I've always been the one who had it together, she said, her voice cracking slightly. I've always been the one people looked up to. But lately, I've been feeling like I'm not enough. Like I'm constantly fighting to stay ahead, but the truth is, I'm scared. I'm scared that one day, I won't be good enough anymore, and that everyone will see me as a fraud. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I knew Madison was ambitious, but I had no idea how deep her insecurities ran. Why didn't you just tell me that? I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. Why couldn't you just be honest with me about how you were feeling? Why did you have to make everything a competition? She looked down at her coffee, avoiding my gaze. I don't know. I've spent so much of my life trying to be perfect, trying to outdo everyone else, that I forgot what it felt like to just be me. And when you started doing better at work, when you started getting noticed, I felt like I was losing control. I didn't know how to handle it. I took a deep breath, trying to process her confession. You don't need to compete with me, Madison, I said, my voice steady but filled with a quiet frustration. I've never wanted to take anything from you. But it feels like you've been trying to tear me down every time I start to stand up for myself. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she took a long sip of her coffee, her fingers shaking slightly as she put the cup back down. I know, she finally whispered. I've been cruel to you, and I'm sorry. I didn't know how to deal with the way I was feeling. And now I see it's cost me. Her words hung in the air between us, and I couldn't quite figure out how I felt. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to move forward and let go of the years of resentment. But another part of me was still angry that she had tried to undermine me for so long and that it had taken a public humiliation for her to finally face the truth. "Do you really mean that, Madison?" I asked quietly. "Do you really understand the impact of everything you've done?" She nodded slowly. "I do. I think I've always known, but I never wanted to admit it. I didn't want to see myself as the villain in our story." I didn't know what to say. I could feel the weight of her apology, but it wasn't enough to erase the years of hurt. Part of me wanted to tell her that we could start fresh, but I didn't know if I was ready for that. There was a lot of damage to undo, and I wasn't sure if it was possible to rebuild the trust that had been shattered over the years. "I don't know what to do with this, Madison," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "I'm not sure I can just forgive you right away. It's going to take time." She nodded again, her eyes brimming with tears. "I understand. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." I stared at her for a moment, trying to gauge if she truly meant it. But deep down, I knew that this wasn't something that could be fixed with a single conversation. There was still so much work to be done, and I wasn't sure I could fully let go of everything she had done, not yet. "Okay," I said slowly, standing up from the table. "We'll see where things go from here. But I need you to understand that I'm not going to let you walk all over me anymore. If you want a real relationship, you need to prove that you can respect me, not just as your sister, but as a person." Madison looked up at me, her face filled with uncertainty. But for the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step in rebuilding what had been broken between us. The weeks that followed were a mix of cautious optimism and lingering tension. Madison and I exchanged messages here and there, each one more polite than the last, but there was no sudden heart-to-heart moment, no dramatic reunion. Instead, we kept our distance, giving each other space to reflect on everything that had happened. I had made it clear to her that I wasn't interested in being manipulated or belittled anymore. There would be no more silent acceptance of her cutting remarks. I had a life to build with Noah, a career that was steadily growing, and the last thing I needed was to be held back by her insecurities. But Madison, despite her apology, didn't quite understand the magnitude of the shift in our dynamic. She still saw herself as the dominant figure, the one people gravitated toward, the one with the power to control situations. And while I had finally stopped letting her run the show in my life, it didn't seem like she had fully grasped that I no longer craved her approval. I wasn't planning on getting caught up in another round of family drama, but the opportunity to turn the tables on Madison presented itself sooner than I thought. It started with a simple phone call one Friday afternoon. I had just wrapped up a meeting at work when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the area code was local, so I answered it, half expecting it to be some kind of telemarketer. "Celeste," a voice on the other end said. It was Richard, my boss. "I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "Not at all, Richard," I replied, surprised but pleased to hear from him. "What's going on?" "I wanted to follow up on a conversation we had last week." "You know, about that promotion," he said, his tone measured but friendly. I sat up straighter in my chair. "Yes, of course. Is there anything I should know?" "Well, I've been giving it more thought. I'm leaning toward offering you a position that would involve managing a larger team, taking on more strategic responsibilities. You'd be the lead on a big project, and I think you're more than ready for it. The compensation would be significant too, of course." I could hardly contain my excitement. This was what I had worked for, a chance to finally prove my worth not just to my family, but to myself. "That sounds incredible, Richard," I said, trying to stay composed. "Thank you for believing in me. I'd be honored." But then came the kicker. "I'm planning on making the announcement soon. And I wanted to get your thoughts on something." "There's someone else in the department I've been keeping an eye on as well," Richard continued. "I won't name names just yet, but let's just say it's someone who might not be too happy with the decision. I wanted to make sure you were prepared for the potential fallout." My heart skipped a beat. I knew exactly where this conversation was heading. My mind immediately went to Madison. She had been working at the same firm as I had, though in a different department. She was ambitious, and she had always been hungry for promotions. If Richard was thinking about offering me a role that would outshine hers, I could already imagine the drama. I understand, I replied cautiously. I'll be ready for whatever comes my way. Thanks again, Richard. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window of my office. The excitement of the promotion was still buzzing inside me, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that this was about to stir up even more tension between Madison and me. I spent the next few days mentally preparing for the inevitable. I didn't know how Madison would react when she found out I was being promoted, but I had a feeling it wouldn't be pretty. The question wasn't whether she'd be upset, that was a given. It was how she would handle it. Then, it happened. The company-wide email came through, officially announcing my promotion. The subject line read, "Exciting leadership changes, new project lead for Q4 and beyond." I felt a rush of pride as I read through the details, but I knew the storm was coming. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed with a message from Madison. "Celeste, we need to talk. Now." I stared at the message, my fingers frozen above the keyboard. Part of me wanted to avoid the conversation altogether. But I couldn't do that. I had made it clear that I wasn't backing down anymore. If Madison wanted to have it out, then I would meet her head-on. I agreed to meet her at the same cafe we had sat in weeks before, the one where we had tried to clear the air. When I arrived, she was already there, her back straight and her posture rigid, as if she was preparing for battle. Her eyes immediately locked onto mine, sharp and guarded. The usual facade of perfection was gone, replaced with a mix of frustration and something else, something raw. "Celeste," she said without preamble, her voice low but tinged with bitterness. "I know what's going on. You got the promotion. And I can't believe it." I sat down across from her, leaning back in my chair. "I didn't get the promotion because I'm trying to one-up you, Madison. I got it because I earned it. And so far, I've been the one putting in the work." She scoffed, her fingers tapping impatiently on the table. "Oh, don't start with that. You think you're better than me now? You think this is your moment? Well, it's not. I've been in this company far longer than you, and I'm the one who's deserved that promotion. You didn't do anything special. You just happened to be in the right place at the right time." Her words stung, but I held my ground. "You've always thought everything should come easy to you, Madison. But sometimes, you have to fight for what you want. And I'm done letting you belittle me every step of the way." She didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at me, her face a mixture of rage and disbelief. I could tell that she was struggling to accept the truth, that she wasn't the only one who had a right to success. She wasn't the only one who could make a name for herself. "I don't know what you think this is, but you'll regret this," she finally muttered. "I've always been the one everyone's depended on. And now you're trying to take that from me. I won't let it happen." I shook my head, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction settle over me. "I'm not trying to take anything from you, Madison. You've been trying to hold me back for years. But I'm done being your competition. I'm done being the little sister you think you can control." Her face contorted with a mixture of anger and frustration. But I wasn't finished. "And by the way," I said, leaning forward slightly, "I don't know if you've heard, but Richard has been looking at you for a promotion too. I wouldn't be surprised if you end up getting one in a different department. So, maybe it's time you stopped acting like your whole world is crumbling." Madison's eyes widened. Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. She sat there, frozen, her world crashing around her as the realization hit her that she had spent so much of her life trying to tear me down, only to be caught in the same cycle herself. For the first time, I saw the wall she had built around herself crack. It wasn't the satisfaction of her failure I was enjoying, it was the moment she realized she wasn't untouchable. "I've had enough, Madison," I said softly. "I'm not going to fight you anymore. But you need to understand that I'm not going to keep proving myself to you." I'm moving on. She didn't respond immediately. The tears that threatened to spill from her eyes were gone, replaced by something else, perhaps regret, or maybe realization. She slowly stood up, looking down at the table before walking away without another word. I watched her leave, not with the bitterness I'd once held, but with a quiet sense of closure. Madison's struggle had never been with me. It had always been with herself. And now, I was free, free from her shadow, free from the expectations of living up to her standards. I had my own life to live, and I wasn't going to let her, or anyone, take that from me. The road ahead wouldn't be perfect, but for the first time in years, I felt at peace. And that was all the victory I needed.